So we look at the situation in the short run. Now we look at the situation in the long run. Let's start this section with a basic question, and try to answer intuitively before I show you the model that can get pretty complicated, especially the first time you see it. So Mike is doing pretty well with his barbecue sandwich place. There's a line at the door every day at every hour. So given that the situation, and assuming that he works in a perfectly competitive environment, meaning that other firms can enter in this market without major difficulties, what do we expect is going to happen to the price of barbecue sandwiches in the area, let's say in the area of Urbana, which is where Mike has his store. So what do we expect the price of this barbecue sandwich to do in the long term? Well, to understand what's going to happen to the price, we need to understand a little bit of what's going to happen in the market, right? So, the Mike is doing really well. He's have a line at the door. Other people, or business entrepreneurs in Urbana and Champaign are seeing that. They're going to his restaurant. They like it, their sandwiches. They have to wait 2 hours to get seated. Mike, moved let's say he moved to a new house and bought a new car. Things are going pretty well for him. So everyone that wants to start a restaurant in Champaign, Urbana, and if you don't, you know that, whatever Mike is doing, he's doing it well. And he's actually doing some pretty good money for himself. So there's going to be an incentive for other entrepreneurs to actually try to enter this market and compete with Mike on selling the barbecue sandwiches in the way he's doing it. So in the long term, as companies have enough time to buy the locales and find the places and enter this market, we would expect Mike to face more competition. In fact, that's one of the things he's considering. He's considering opening a new store that eventually is going to split his consumer base in two, right? So we would expect this market in the long term, as time goes by, to be more competitive as more firms enter the market to try to reap some of these profits. So as more companies enter the market, if you have, Sam or Anna has a new store or barbecue place, Anna's barbecue place, and she just came into the area and is going to compete with Mike, who's been there for a while, she's going to have to charge a lower price, right? So as more companies try to compete with Mike, there's going to be a downward pressure on the price. That ultimately is going to benefit consumer. And that pressure on the price to go down is going to continue as long as this barbecue sandwiches places continue to do well and other companies continue to enter. The process will stop when the profits are eliminated. And if you remember, profits is revenue minus cost. On a per unit basis, is price minus average total cost. So you can expect the process of companies entering to stop when the price equals the average total cost. And if this is a competitive industry, all the firms are the same, then that leaves those firms operating at a most efficient scale in the market. Now, that makes sense to you intuitively, but sometimes a model, a diagrammatic model, can help us understand this better. So here's the model we're going to use. We have one side, we have the typical firm in this competitive market. There's no barriers to entry, so many firms can enter this market. All of them have the same cost structure. And on the right-hand side, we have the market. This is a market for, let's say, barbecue sandwiches, but it could be the market for anything as long as it's competitive. The firm, now in the first of the axis, the market has price in the vertical axis, as we always do, and then quantity in the market and the horizontal axis. The firm has the same price in the vertical axis, but firm quantity in the horizontal axis. If you have 10 firms, the market quantity is whatever output each of those firms make, which should be the same. If it's the same firm, typical firm is the same at the market, right? So the big Q is the market quantity, small q is the firm quantity. Both models are connected through the price, which is the same. Because the firm is going to take the price that is given by the market and it's going to operate and do the best way it can with that price. Since this is a perfectly competitive market, this firm has to take the price that's given from the market and it cannot change it. Now, furthermore, we said that a firm is going to maximize profit when marginal revenue equals marginal cost. But for a perfectly competitive industry, marginal revenue and price are the same. And this should also make sense. If the price is always fixed, right? If total revenue is price times quantity, but the price is always fixed, every time you increase your quantity by 1, which is what marginal revenue is, your total revenue is going to go up by the price, right? Every time if you sell your sandwiches at $8, how much your revenue goes up when you sell one more sandwich is $8, right? And how much your revenue will go up when you sell the second sandwich, also $8. So every time you sell one additional sandwich, which is your marginal revenue, your revenue goes up by exactly the price. So in the case of the perfectly competitive firm, the marginal revenue and the price are the same. And that means that marginal revenue equals price for the perfectly competitive firms means price equals marginal cost for the perfectly competitive firm. So the perfectly competitive firm will produce right here, which is where marginal revenue, which is price for the perfectly competitive firms, equals marginal cost. Now, at that point, which is how much profits this company is making, well, that depends on the average total cost, the cost per unit, because we know that profits is going to be equal to price minus average total cost times whatever units the firm produces. In this case, you see, when the firm produces this much, this many units, and it prices this much, the average total cost is down here. So this firm is making all these profits right here. This is Mike's situation. Mike is making profits, right? So this fact that the price is higher than the average total cost suggests that this firm in this market is making profits. And like I said, that gives an incentive to other entrepreneurs to enter the market. So as more entrepreneurs enter the market, the supply curve would shift to the right. And as more people enter, the price is driven down. And as the price is driven down, the firm will have to take a new price, which is always going to be lower, and it's going to cut the firm's profit. You see that now with this price, this firm has to produce that much, right? So each firm produces a little less, and the profits are eliminated. Not eliminated completely, but they're driven down because now Mike is going to have to share the consumers with other companies, right? And the profits are going to be lower. And you would suggest that this process will continue as long as there's profits to be made, and that is as long as the price is higher than the average total cost. So when the supply curve shifts enough, let's say to this point, at that point the price is driven all the way down to the lowest point of the average total cost curve, right? And at that point, each firm is producing Q3. There's a lot more firms in the market. That's why the market quantity, right? So people are buying a lot more barbecue sandwiches. And the price of barbecue sandwiches is a lot less than it was before. But each firm that stays in the market is actually going to produce a little less than Mike was producing. And that makes sense. Mike is going to have to share his customers with a lot more firms than before. And since that's occurring, each firm is going to make a little less profits than what Mike was making before. Now at the end, the process ends. You see, when the price is at the lowest point of the average total cost curve, which is also the point in which the marginal cost curve crosses the average total cost curve. So a London equilibrium occurs when price equals average total cost and also equals marginal cost. This is going to be your equilibrium point. And notice that at that point, companies are making zero profits. That's the first thing you say. Companies are making zero profits. Now remember that at the beginning of this week, I told you what that meant. That doesn't mean that companies, owners like Mike that has a barbecue sandwich store are not taking money home. Yeah, they are taking accounting profits home. So Mike is paying himself at least a salary that is as high as he would make if he was doing something else. But economic profits are zero. Now the second point here is that whatever company stay, it's operating at the lowest point of the average total cost curve. So it's operating at the most efficient scale of production. It's where the cost per unit are the lowest. So this again is the idea of natural selection, survival of the fittest, whatever you want to call it, right? This is the idea that only those firms who are the most efficient one are those firms who will actually stay in the market in the long run those firms will be the only one able to stay in the market if this market is competitive, and firms have to compete mostly on cost. Now, this model, the first time you see, so you're seeing it for the first time, you're probably shocked right now, right? Because this is, it's a lot of stuff going on here. So the only way you will learn this model is if you actually try to use it many times, not only in your practice problems, but I'm actually going to offer you a couple more videos in which I actually show you a couple more examples in which we use the model by changing different curves, and we see we follow through the process from the short run to the long run. And the more you use the model, the more you'll be able to actually use it effectively. But the main ideas intuitively should still make sense, and that's the idea that in the competitive markets, firms competing with each other are going to have the effect of reducing the price, which is actually ultimately good for consumers. But we continue to use the model in the next section with a couple more examples.
Produced by OCE Atlas Digital Media at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign.